So this episode, we are going to be joined by Maddie, who is a familiar voice if you've listened to season 1 or previous episodes before. But this time, we're excited to have her husband, Matt, with us as well. Maddie and Matt, we are so thankful that you're willing to sit down and talk with us. And what we want to have a bit of a chat about today is kind of how anxiety plays out in a relationship when one of the people in that relationship struggles with anxiety, how that can impact the relationship. Matt, what your role is as Maddie's husband, and how you've found having to deal with that as your relationship started and grew and obviously got deeper to the point where you guys are now married. And yeah, just how God plays into that as well, and how your faith has enabled you guys to go through the various journeys that you've been on and face the things that you've had to face as a couple together. So thank you so much for joining us today and being willing to share your stories.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
It'd be great if you could just start and just tell us a bit of your story, like how you guys met, when you guys got together, all that kind of thing. I'm a bit of a romantic at heart.
Sure. Okay. I think we've rehearsed this by
now. So we met in Newcastle in New South Wales. I was sent over to Newcastle for work for about a 3-month sort of contract, just to help out, and then I would be sent back to South Australia. And I got invited to go to a church by one of my colleagues, and I think it was my second week at that church, and it was that classic turn around and get to know someone around you, awkward, the worst thing. Everyone hates it, but it turned out pretty well for me because,
Nice.
met Maddie, and she was, sitting behind me, and we got chatting, and
we got chatting. He forgot who I was by the end of the service, though. I'd taken my jacket off, so I was no longer looking the same.
Yep.
But a group of us went out for dinner that night, and Matt and I shared our testimonies with each other. Just definitely clicked, but I was interested. And then one of my friends said to me, "Oh, you know that new guy? He's only here for a few more weeks." And I hadn't known that, and I thought, "Oh, how dare he? Who is this player who's just coming and flirting with the new girl at church?" So I kind of shut him down, and went on and dated someone else. In the meantime, he got extended the contract for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So he stuck around, and we were in Bible study together. We weren't really friends. We were just around each other. And fast forward to about a year later, I was single again, and Matt was aware of that.
Yeah, so I had overheard. It was actually quite funny. I overheard her tell one of my friends to spread the word to the rest of the church that she was now single. So this is what I heard, and I was like, I was going to take my time, but then she's like spreading the word that she's single. I'm like, okay, I need to be a little bit quicker here.
And to clarify, that was a misunderstanding. I was only meaning that if people asked, yes, we'd broken up. I didn't want to have to be asked by 50 different people.
Yeah,
so,
yep.
But Matt took that a little seriously and definitely put the moves on pretty quickly. And we just became good friends and talked and things, and started dating, I think, 2 weeks before lockdown.
Oh, wow.
So, it was all a bit, it was great. Yeah, Matt met my parents once before we got married, basically, because they were living in New Zealand. We dated all through 2020 lockdown. Eventually got to meet each other's families. Matt's were in Adelaide, and got married last year in June. So it's been fantastic. Just over a year.
It has been over just over a year now. That's great. Fantastic. And I'm so glad you guys found each other. You guys are wonderful together from everything I've seen. It's interesting though, when you start a relationship, part of that early stages is you're kind of learning about who each other are, and what you do and don't like, the kind of things you're into, that kind of stuff. So it was pretty cool that you started off, on that first night with sharing your testimonies with each other. So you obviously had that shared point of faith, and also meeting at church always helps.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
But Maddie, you are someone who has suffered from anxiety throughout your life. Just in case people haven't listened to the previous episodes, do you want to just give us the very short rundown of anxiety for you?
Yeah. I have been anxious as long as I can remember, like as a kid, and just a big overthinker, very wired. And so that's taken on, I guess, like it's showed up differently over the years in my life. But I've always craved sort of stability, and that's kind of been a big theme of my anxiety. My anxiety is not coping with change very well, and I have gone through a lot of change in life. Even just geographically, I was a missionary kid. So over the years, I've learned a lot more about myself and how to manage that anxiety, why it happens, and that it's not my fault. And I'm getting better at sharing that with other people. So
yeah. And I think one of the important things for this conversation is that the anxiety is still there, as much as you've kind of learnt better how to deal with things over time. You've shared before that it's not that your anxiety has gone away; it's that you're perhaps better equipped these days to try and deal with it, and for it to not as impact you as much as it does. But it's still there, and it's still sitting there in the back of your mind.
No, exactly.
Yeah, so that's what's that like then to be starting a new relationship? You guys, Matt put his quick moves on you once he knew you were back on the market, and you guys get together. So what is that like when when did you first have to start telling Matt or sharing with Matt about your anxiety?
It's hard to remember the exact point we talked about it, because we had shared quite deeply about our lives, and we'd been around each other at church and in small groups. So I guess I knew that he had a basic level of understanding that there were things I struggled with. But obviously in a new relationship, you're trying to appear independent and like you have it all together and
Your best
confident.
self-forward, right?
Exactly. So I think there definitely came a point where I knew I didn't want to take things any further unless I'd sort of given him the opportunity to back out, basically. I didn't want to sort of invest and then get 6 months down the track and Matt feel like, oh gosh, I wish I'd known all of this about you sooner. This is too much for me. And I definitely made the mistake in previous relationships where I hadn't probably been as honest about mental health. And then, understandably, it had come as a bit of a shock to whoever I was dating. So, I think probably within the first couple of weeks, definitely had a more serious conversation where I said, this is what things look like for me. These are some things I struggle with. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, and I remember that night because we weren't even actually we weren't like officially going out or anything. We were just sort of in the early stages of just going on a couple of dates and getting to know each other. We both knew that it was probably going somewhere. So I think I found that really admirable that Maddie took that opportunity even before things got too serious to let me know. And I remember we were in the car somewhere, I think, and you sort of opened up about what that looked like for you as a kid and growing up, and some of the things you've struggled with your mental health, and I remember it was some pretty serious things, and I was like, okay, this isn't one. It's you've suffered from this in the past, and it's actually developed and formed who you are today to some degree. And it also is not something that's going away. So it's actually something that moving forward, can't really take this lightly. This has to be taken seriously. And I remember going home that night and, you sort of, you told me about what it was and how it worked for you. And I had to go home that night and just do some praying
Yeah.
and talk to God about that um, and really consider whether or not this relationship was something that I felt like I was being called to pursue, because
Mm.
I knew it would be a significant um, have a significant impact on our lives together.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's sort of how that initial conversation came about.
Yeah. And you told me you felt like you'd heard from God.
Yeah, yeah. So I think after that, yeah, I just did some business with God and sort of put it before Him.
Yep.
And I had been single for probably about 3 years at this point, and I feel like that time was a really really good time of growth for me,
Mm.
and I so I think I somewhat was wondering whether this, getting married, in a relationship sort of thing was going to
Mm.
actually happen for me. And
Yeah.
I'd gotten to the point where I was kind of okay with not, if
Okay.
that's what God was
Yeah.
calling me to do. Um, and so, yeah, sort of talking to God about this um, and I felt like God was telling me that the time that I had the last 3 years had been preparation and God doing a work in me to be able to be in a position where
Yeah.
I could love and support someone like Maddie who had these struggles. And
Mm.
yeah, so I sort of had that life experience. And yeah, so I definitely felt like God was telling me to pursue Maddie and not let that stand in the way.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's pretty awesome. Um, I think it's pretty admirable on both your accounts, Maddie. Just the fact that you had already gotten to that point in yourself where you were self-aware enough and had the experience to go. I need to share this at the outset.
Yeah.
This is part of who I am. This is not going away, and I need to do you the honor of letting this is me.
Yeah.
All of it. Um, but also, Matt, yeah, your willingness to take that to God and to uh, to actually do the business with Him and sit in that and ultimately hear from Him. Was it confronting though, having her kind of actually go into details about what she struggles with and how that impacts her life?
Yeah, I think for me, I am a pretty stable sort of person, pretty level headed. I haven't personally struggled with anxiety or,
Yep.
yeah, that sort of mental health side of things. Definitely not to the extent that Maddie has. I'm pretty
Mm.
stable in that regard. Um, and so, yeah, I guess hearing from Maddie about the impact that it had on her, and yeah, that definitely, yeah, it was interesting to
Mm.
find out. Um, I had experience with like my family members and workmates um, and leading a youth group, that sort of stuff. I'd been exposed to anxiety
Yep.
and the struggles of mental health, but definitely not on this sort of level.
Mm.
Sharing intimately with someone about some really hard things. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think from my point of view back then, as much as it was amazing to know this really stable, mature kind of guy who didn't struggle with those things,
Mm.
that was also, I guess, a niggling fear of mine that he hadn't experienced what that felt
Yeah.
like.
Okay.
And yeah, I felt really burdened by needing to make him understand.
Mm.
I'm not just saying that I get stressed. It's like, no, sometimes I'll be curled up in a ball and I'll be inconsolable and I'll think that there's no point to life, and there'll be no tangible reason for that. And
Mm.
trying to get that message across to someone who doesn't have any firsthand experience
Mm.
was a journey, and it's one we're still on. Sometimes we're
Yeah.
still going, okay, this is how I feel in this moment, and trying to bring the other person along. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, yeah, I'm 15 years almost into my marriage, and
Wow.
Beth and I are still learning how to figure out each other's mental health.
Yeah.
It's you never get to that point of going, oh yeah, cool. I know exactly how to look after you, and I know exactly
Yeah.
what to do. Yeah, you never stop learning in that regards.
Mm.
Um, so then obviously you guys get together, which is great. You're dating throughout lockdown, which probably makes things a little bit harder. Maddie, do you think Matt being a very stable and level-headed person was perhaps something that drew you to him? You know, knowing that you don't like change, you don't like being unpredictable and things like that. Was there any of that?
Yeah, definitely. I found his, I guess, his maturity and wisdom really attractive.
Mm,
Yeah, when we say stable, probably more just mentally,
mm.
rather than like, yeah, Matt's a really fun person and very spontaneous and wants to go on adventures. And
I've seen
I
the
mean, we've
videos of him
already.
trying to catch seagulls with his hands.
Yes, exactly. That's him. He's a bit of a wild man. So, yeah, no, I was definitely attracted to the stability, I guess, more coming from, mental
Mm,
stability, just really being grounded in who he was or is, um, who he is in Christ, and how he can relate to other people. Yeah, I just noticed that straight away.
yeah, that's really cool. So then as the relationship progresses, obviously you guys get to a point where, hey, this is serious. This is, you know, what the person I want to spend my life with. Um, and so, over the course of, getting to that point, you start to share more with each other. Your day to days start to become more linked with each other's. So, what was that like? I guess from both of you, when I guess the first time, yeah, maybe you were in a real anxious period or a real had a real panic attack or anxiety attack or something like that, and Matt was the one who was, there to console you or look after you through that. Can you remember what that was like?
Yeah, I think two scenarios come to mind
Mm,
for me, because obviously when you're just dating, you're not living together,
yeah.
you can still really hide
Yep.
a lot of that anxiety and just sort of perk up for a nice date and then go home and crash.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how long it took, but I know there were a few nights at Bible study where, for whatever reason, I just got really overwhelmed and a little bit claustrophobic, and I'd gone to the bathroom or something, and after 10 15 minutes, Matt would text me and say, "Are you okay?" And he would offer, like, if you need to go, let's just go. And I remember texting back and kind of going, "Oh no, I can't, like, I'm not going to pull you away from this, and
Mm,
I feel bad and it's awkward," and had all these reasons. And Matt was really good at just taking charge of the situation, knowing that
mm,
I wasn't in a decision making mindset. And he would say, "No, that's okay. Like, I'll arrange, this other person, they can get a lift home with that person, and I'm taking you home. Like, I'll make an excuse for you. You just meet me at the front door," kind of thing. So that was like pretty early on. He
yeah.
had sort of picked up on helping me in those scenarios. And I know there was one day where I was having a panic attack, and they didn't happen as often, but
Mm,
I think he'd come to the house to pick me up or something, and I was, I don't know, in my room banging my head against the wall or something. I
mm,
didn't even answer the front door. He let himself in and just came and sat and didn't try and swamp me with questions about what's
mm.
going on, what's wrong, what can I do. So yeah, those were probably the two really early times of experiencing that together.
Mm,
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it was important for me during that time to. I was in a stage of learning,
mm,
and I'm a problem solver, and I need to fix things, and
yeah.
mental health and anxiety is not something that can just be fixed or
Mm,
switched off. So I think for me, I had to really just be patient and just learn how to sit in that moment and
yeah.
just go, I'm just here to listen. and learn and support. And Maddie was really good at bringing me along for that journey, just sort of explaining things as we went and as she was able to. And yeah, I think I just had a real mindset of just like, I'm just here to learn, and because I don't really know, and it's not something that can be fixed. So there's, you know, preventative measures and things that can be helpful. So I think during that time, I think I've had just a real attitude of just like, just teach me, just talk to me about what's going on. What's some coping things? What in this situation, how would you like me to react? And we often, you know, off the back of something like an experience like that, often led to conversations, learning conversations. You know, in case this happens next time, you know, what's some things that I can be doing?
The debrief afterwards.
Yeah. And a lot of the time it was still, I was learning as well. So there was a lot of, actually, I don't know, let's kind of figure it out together, or sorry, mind blank there.
No, I think it's also important. Maddie also was very good at, or is good at, especially in the early days of dating, telling me that, making it known to me that those moments of vulnerability, not everyone is there to see that, and that's her true colors and true self. And I think being recognizing that's a privileged place for me to be in, and she's actually letting me into a part of her life that is extremely personal and confronting and scary, to let someone else into. So I think that needed to be taken seriously. And Maddie was very good at, like, you know, not everyone gets to see this side of me, sometimes not even my family. So yeah, inviting someone into that space and making sure that they're aware of their privilege in that time is also important, I think.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I think in some ways, and obviously I'd love to hear what your thoughts were like, but phrasing it in that way takes it away from the very confronting, do I want to deal with this anymore, to actually well, in some ways this is the ultimate sign of trust that I'm placing in you to allow you to be here in this and see me like this. Did it did it bring up anything for you, Matt? Did you ever think about taking her up on that option of not going along with things?
No, not really. I love a challenge, and
you were in too deep too quickly.
Yeah. No, I think COVID definitely. We were sort of, as we started dating, COVID hit, so we were sort of each other's buddies, in each other's bubbles. So I think, we became each other's safe place very quickly.
Neither of us had family and like living in the same state or even country. So I think we recognized that emotionally things were moving really quickly, but part of that was just, we were, you know, aside from friends, we were all each other had, and we got to spend a lot of time together that, you know, normally would be with family, I guess. So, yeah.
Obviously there comes a point where Matt asks you a certain question, Maddie. You guys kind of make it official and get engaged, and part of, you know, getting engaged, especially, you know, when you're in the church, is pre-marriage counseling and starting to think more about, okay, we're actually now going from just being in a relationship, but we still have our own distinct spaces. In some ways, yes, even though our lives are connected a lot, they are still two lives that can be somewhat independent. To now, this is going to be, you know, we are going to be a team. This is going to be us doing everything together, living together, sharing it all together, kind of thing. Did you guys have to talk through and think through what that looked like for you guys, especially without any other family support around you guys up in Newcastle, being each other's only people? Was there, you know, in preparing to start living together and things like that, did it make you guys talk through the anxiety anymore, or factor it into your equations?
I think, man, in that time, it was so important for us to have our mentors and our, you know, our Connect leaders at the time, who led us through pre-marriage counselling,
Mm.
which I think we had already discussed a lot of things, but I think pre-marriage counselling led to more in-depth conversations about what this means practically for us moving forward.
Yeah.
And really help set us up for success.
Yeah.
I think so. That was really important to lean on those people and to then do the pre-marriage counselling. We did the alpha one.
Yeah, nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. And I think we're both very sort of open communicators, and we didn't really leave any stone unturned. We talked about everything, and I think that was a huge help. Anxiety wise, is just knowing, I guess, a little bit of what to expect and being really practical about it, and talking about, you know, who would do the cooking, and are we both cleaning? Am I doing the washing? You know, we found what would work for us. We were just really determined to be good at marriage. Like, I think we just took it as a bit of a challenge.
That's a really good thing.
We heard about, you know, all the common arguments and things about money or sex or those sorts of things, and we just went, right, well, let's just talk about it. Let's not shy away from it.
Leave no stone unturned.
Yeah. And I think on a practical level, like for my anxiety and for I guess how change kind of triggers that. Obviously getting married is a huge change. So there were some things we did to help with that. Like Matt moved into a little rental unit, I think a couple of months before we got married, and I got to be part of, you know, helping decorate and making it our space, not just his space. So that by the time we got married and I was actually able to move in there, it already felt like home. So just some little things like that helped.
That's really cool. Matt, you said that, you know, those mentors enabled you guys to have some of those conversations that set you up for success. What are some of those things, if you're happy to talk about it, that actually did set you guys up for success?
Yeah, I think we spoke about conflict styles, and we found that to be really helpful. In that Maddie is more of a family of origin. That I think Maddie comes from a family that will just openly have conflict over a dining room table, over dinner, and then the next minute everything's back to normal and everything's fine and they're laughing again. Whereas for me, I came from a family where I had never even seen my parents fight.
Yeah,
wow.
Or like raise their voices. It was
you couldn't think of a single time.
Yeah, they were behind the door, you know, closed door, you know, people. So I think identifying that conflict is not a sign of a failing relationship. It's actually a sign of a healthy, thriving one. Was something that took a lot of time for me to get used to and understand. You know, we'd have like a slight disagreement. I'm like, oh my gosh, we are failing at this. What's happening? So I think, definitely realizing that conflict is not something to shy away from, and just to get things out on the table really quickly and just hash things out, which we've grown to be pretty good at. I think if there's anything underlying, we pick up on it pretty quickly and just deal with it. So
speaking of which,
that conflict style is a huge one because I'm the same. Beth blows up in a conflict. I go very quiet and
hedgehog.
Go and process, and I will think of my responses and get back to you in due course. 2 hours or 2 days. And that's it. You know, until you begin to understand that, hey, this is not, you know, Beth's not blowing up because she wants to end the marriage. This is how she's learned how to deal with conflict. This is how conflict was modeled to her, kind of thing. Whereas I was the same, you know, to you, Matt. I don't think there's only once I can remember in my life seeing my parents argue about something, kind of thing, when I was living at home. And I remember that just kind of knocked me back a little bit as well, because it's like, what? Mum and Dad are fighting? This is not something that has happened before. You know, obviously since growing up and, you know, having a different relationship with my parents now that I've been married for as long as I have been, and getting to know them as different people now. They're very open about the fact that there was a lot of conflict and there's a lot of disagreement and things like that.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing, they dealt with it in the way that they dealt with it, which was with each other behind closed doors, similar to your parents, I think, Matt. But yeah, it took me that time to go, okay, all right. Beth getting angry about something is not the end. That's okay. We need to work out, and I need to be brave and put on my big boy pants and actually respond, and not just shy away and hide away and think about all the things I want to say but never actually say them to her, which I'm still learning how to do.
Yeah.
I think communication is really key, and I think it's really affirming to hear you guys say about how that kind of open communication really set you guys up for that. Because I think this is one of the common threads that I've seen in talking with people who deal with anxiety, that hardest step can be talking about it or inviting someone else into that space. But in doing that, or the moment you do that, you take so much of the anxiety's power away just by even speaking it out loud to someone else. And this is what I'm worried about. This is what my mind is telling me is going to happen. The minute you can bring that out loud and have someone else to share that with, you start to go, okay, this is not as big as my brain is telling me that it is, while it's spiraling out of control.
Yeah.
So, then, Matt, I'd love to hear from you about how that is then for you as the on the receiving end of that, so to speak. So obviously being the person that, hears from Maddie when she's anxious or hears her anxiety spoken out. How do you, how does that look for you? How do you feel about that, being the person that, kind of gets to hear all these things that she's worried about that aren't true, but they're anxious thoughts. But yeah, how do you deal with that? How do you process through that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Maddie is someone who will map out every single scenario that could possibly ever happen, and things that will never ever happen, but she's got a plan just in case.
Of course.
So it's I kind of just listen to a lot and just just sort of nod my head and go, oh, that's cool. I don't really need to encourage her to have you thought about this scenario, because she's already thought of it.
And she has 4 different plans for it.
Yeah, exactly. She told me one day, she was like, I've got a plan mapped out if you were to die tomorrow, and what I would do, what I would say, who I would call, how long it would take for me to transition out of your family and go back to mine, and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Golly, I'm so sorry, Schofield. I would never transition.
This is in date. This is early dating, but yeah. I don't know. I think just recognizing that that this is someone who is entrusting this information to you, and I don't know, how else would you describe?
I can think of 2 sort of scenarios that I guess kind of explain how Matt reacts to me. The first was a few weeks ago. Matt had the idea to rearrange the furniture in our lounge room.
This is a good one.
Do you want to tell it?
No, you go.
Yeah. Okay. So I was livid. I was just so annoyed that he would possibly want to change something, especially something that was working fine. And yeah, my response was so disproportionate to the scenario. It even kind of frustrated me, because I knew that I was blowing it out of proportion, but I was in tears. I was like, no, stop trying to change things. This is my home. We're not moving the furniture. That's ridiculous. And Matt's
dead set against it.
Yeah. And Matt's response, which probably didn't help, was he was laughing at me, because the whole time he was saying, look, that we're going to change it and you're going to love it. You just have to give yourself time to adjust.
But I could see it was a genuine, this was, this is our home that we've set up, and this has become Maddie's safe space. So for me to go around and change that sort of looks and feels different was a big deal to her. And I think I needed to, I gradually introduced the idea. Like it was probably over a space of about 3 months that I was
What?
gradually sort of saying, I'm not really happy with this arrangement. I think
You
we
had
can
a
do it
plan all along.
better. And so it took time to sort of get you there. And then I think we were away in New Zealand visiting your parents, and I was like, right, where it was a rainy afternoon, and Maddie's mum enjoys a bit of interior design and remodeling, so I cut up all our little bits of paper and into the rough size of our living room, and cut out a space for our couch and our dining room table, and and all these the TV cabinet, and we rearranged them on the bit of paper so she could see visually what it would look like and work out what was the best fit.
I was just mad.
You were not happy, no.
No.
But then we got back to Adelaide, and I was like, right, we should just try this now, and if you don't like it, we can just change it straight back. Like it'll take us half an hour to do this, and it will take half an hour to reset it if you don't like it. So
yeah,
we did it. And
I love it. It's great. But all that to say, I know as much as I was annoyed with Matt in those moments where he was pretty much just laughing at me. He was saying that that I'd be fine with it eventually, and I'd know that he was right. As much as I was annoyed, I also appreciated that he could make light of it, and that he felt comfortable that anxiety, as much as it is this big serious thing, you take the power away when you just call it for what it is. And he could have reacted and just been frustrated with me for being so stubborn and anxious, but he chose to just laugh about it and be patient until I came around. So
this is a really interesting one, because I'd heard the story from Maddie's perspective before, Matt. And so I kind of knew where the story was going. But what I hadn't known was that you'd already had this plan about thinking through about how to slowly...
I didn't know that either.
The idea with... the idea with her, slowly get her used to the idea of change. I mean, to some degree, the plan didn't work, though, because she obviously still had that big reaction when... when push came to shove, and just like, all right, we're going to map out how it is, we're going to change it. Is that something that you've found you've had to learn along the way in different ways to broach some of the things that are going to be, things about change or things that are going to trigger her anxiety?
Yeah, I think I remember one example when we were really early days of dating, and Maddie told me about this concept of change and how she really struggles with it, and especially around people cancelling plans on her. This was a big deal for her, and she explained that it wasn't that the plans were changing. It was that the trust in that person diminishes when they cancel on her. And so she had explained that to me very briefly, and then anyway, one night we were meant to be hanging out at this certain time, and something else, I can't even remember what it was.
Something came up, and you were tired from work, and you weren't able to go anymore.
I had to work late or something, and I sort of said, "Oh, I'm working late tonight. I can't do tonight, and we'll hang out tomorrow night or something." And that it invoked an emotional stress response for Maddie, that she later, once she came out of it, that I wasn't there at the time, but she was able to explain that to me, that this is the response that it brought up, and that was really...
I think that surprised you. You were like, oh, but it wasn't even a plan. We were just planning to hang out. So I was definitely nervous to, I guess, be honest about, that is how it makes me feel. And I know it's disproportionate and it's, not ideal, but can you avoid this?
Yeah. And I think it made no sense in my head. I was like, that's that's ridiculous, but I think I don't understand,
Yep.
and because I don't understand, I've got no right to get upset about this. All I can do is learn and adjust to suit.
Yeah.
So I think ever since then, um, yeah, even like, you know, if I'm rocking up late or, 5-10 minutes later than I originally said, then I think we make sure that we have open communication about that, and because I know that's really important for Maddie, and
Yeah, and I can really trust you.
Yeah.
But even, I mean, this weekend we're going camping, and Matt knows that I've been anxious because we're going with some people that are a bit more go with the flow, and there aren't plans set in stone. And I've been really blessed seeing the way that Matt has recognized that that's hard for me, and he said, look, just trust me, I'll sort it out. I'll work out who's sleeping where and what the food is and who's traveling in which car. Like, don't worry about it. Yeah, and it's been nice that even before it's become an issue, he's just sort of stepped in and taken the lead there.
Matt, I want to put this bluntly. You sound like a pretty awesome guy. The way, honestly, the way you care for Maddie, the way you're able to step up and take charge in those circumstances when you need to, the way you've just been, willingly, lovingly by her side, supporting her best and wanting to learn best how to support her throughout all of this. Does it, and it can be okay if it hasn't, but does it ever come to the point where it doesn't necessarily even feel like a burden, but you feel it weighing you down, the responsibility of kind of carrying two people in some respects, or the responsibility of having to be the one that does take charge and put things in place and make sure that things are going to go all right?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of to and fro. And in recent times, I've been really struggling with some things with my mental health. So I think it's what we've generally found is that when one person is struggling, the other person steps up to the occasion, even if they're not in the space to. They find the strength through God, giving us the strength and the wisdom of how to approach these situations to pull the other one up. And I think we've found that to be really true this year. We've both gone through some pretty heavy changes and days that have been pretty dark. So there's been days that I've definitely, as you say, have carried Maddie during certain times. But as Maddie has been vulnerable with me, I've been able to be vulnerable with Maddie and trust her that that it's okay for me to have a down day as well. And during those times, Maddie's been the one to I've had probably a week or 2 weeks where Maddie's been the sole person, just like I've been hiding in my hole, and Maddie's just been carrying the team. And so I think it's definitely to both ways.
Maddie, what was that like for you, especially when Matt first started to struggle, perhaps then, of having to go from being hang on, I'm the one that gets looked after, I'm the one that has the anxiety. How did that make you feel when all of a sudden he started having to deal with some of his mental health challenges?
Yeah, it's funny because as we've said, Matt is often just the very stable, reliable one. And even while we were dating, I'd never really seen him in any kind of dark place or even just stressed out. Like, I think, and I used to think about that, will that change once we get married, when we're just around each other all the time? Will that come out more, or does that side to him not exist? And as Matt said, this year has been huge. We've moved houses and states twice. We've moved jobs, both of us, multiple times. And through that, I've seen Matt come to terms with anxiety for himself, and having days where he felt nervous to go to work, or he was not up to seeing people and we had to cancel plans, or he just needed to not talk to anyone and retreat a little bit. And that was really confronting because, you know, you get comfortable in your sort of dynamic and your roles, and mine is, you know, predominantly Matt's there for me. And yeah, it's as much as it's a blessing to get to be there for him too, I definitely had those thoughts of like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this. I don't feel good today, and I don't think I can be there for you the way you need me. And I think in those times where I felt like I have nothing to give and Matt has nothing to give, that those are the times that I've been, I guess, reminded that God is the only constant in our lives, and that as much as we can have someone who is like our rock, Matt can't be my rock. And that trust and faith that I've been putting in Matt is, I mean, he's human, and at some point that's always going to fail. And it's really taken me until this year to kind of, I guess, not take him off a pedestal as much as just recognize that first and foremost, my absolute trust has to be in God. And that way I can't be let down, you know?
So good.
Something like that.
Really good. And Matt, you were saying that, especially like when, you know, when one of you is down, the other one kind of is able to pick things up and carry it for you. And you say that, you know, find the strength in God to be able to, you know, pick up that burden or carry the team during those times. What does that look like for you, finding that strength in God?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been really important to begin the day with God. And that's been something that ever since I left school, I sort of made the decision as to how I'm going to start my day and how early I'm going to get up. And so, it's been a constant ever since I left school, from just having a morning quiet time. Sort of releasing any anxiety or any, you know, questions that you've got before your day to God, and just trusting in Him. And that's been an interesting journey, moving from my personal quiet time with God in the morning as it's like quite a personal space where you talk with God, and you it's quite it's where you you know, hear from God, and you make big decisions about the direction of your life. So that had been quite a personal space for me for a number of years, and then to invite someone else into that space once we got married, that was really interesting. I think we've done really well at like transitioning from like individual quiet times with God in the morning to doing that together as a couple. And I think we've gotten really good at praying together and you know, sharing a devotional time, and it's just a part of our habit and routine now. Is you know, we wake up in the morning and we go for a run, and then we have our coffee and spend some time with God, which has been amazing. But I think it's also lost that individual time with God as well, doing business with God for yourself, because God's at work in us, but He's also at work in me individually and with Maddie individually. And so I think that's been something we haven't quite figured out yet, is how to spend, because we've gotten into this awesome habit and routine of just doing our devotions together in the morning. Just giving God the space to do work in us as well individually, and then coming together and spending time with Him in prayer together. So that's something we've recognized recently, and we're like, oh, that's interesting. We should probably work on that. So
that's really cool. And then I guess especially in those big life changes that you guys have had to deal with over the last couple of years, especially, how do you bring God into those situations, knowing that change is a big trigger for Maddie's anxiety? It's not necessarily an easy thing to navigate. How do you bring God into those situations?
Yeah, it's a great question.
I think probably like with anything big on your mind, just bringing it before God, just vocalizing it, and not necessarily asking for any specific answer, but just saying what do you want to say to us about this or about this change, or and I think for me a big part of my relationship with God has been journaling about it and speaking to him that way. And that's great because it means that over time, as I read back, I've got this history of all the times where I've needed God and he's come through. And it can be so easy to forget that when you're not, recording them or being reminded of that. So I think knowing that we've been through change before, God's brought us through it, he's never let us down, sort of carrying that faith and that hope into the next scenario or, whatever's next, knowing that, he has never let us down. So.
Yeah. I think it's the way I've generally gone about this is to have, I think there's a verse in Proverbs about, it's wise to have many advisors, and I think that's something I've always taken very seriously, and always had people in my life who know me and love me that I can run things by and go, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I've got this scenario. Would you just pray about it and get back to me? And so I think, that's been family members, that's been housemates in the past, that's been close friends and relatives. I think having those people in your life that you trust and that can pray into situations for you, and then coming back to you with answers, like kind of expecting, I'm giving this to you now. Can you pray about it and get back to me in a few days' time with where you've landed on that? Is really important, because then you can compare notes.
Yeah. That's really cool. It's not just, hey, can you pray for me? And then it's almost like, okay, I've done my bit. I've asked you to pray for it. Job done, tick. But asking them to actually consciously be praying through this. What is God saying to you about this? And then let's actually talk about that is huge. I really like that. That's really cool. We've kind of jumped around this topic a little bit. But how's your faith sustained you during some of these difficult periods that you guys have faced?
Oh, I think hugely so. I think it's, for me at least, it's that one, like Maddie was saying earlier, like it's that constant, unchanging thing in your life that is, God is forever, and He is the provider, and I don't have to strive or worry, or I can actually just be and just be in his presence and enjoy the life he has given me. And I think of verses, don't be anxious about anything, but what's it like?
Pray about everything.
Pray about everything.
Tell God your needs.
Present everything to God through prayer and petition. I think, he wants to hear from us, and for me at least, my faith is something that that is very real and that I feel. It's not something that just I know on an intellectual sort of level, but it's something that I feel, and that the Spirit is within me. So there's those times when on an intellectual level, you sometimes, grow a little bit tired or whatever. But even just recently at church, I had a moment of just feeling his Spirit and just going, wow, okay, you are actually real, you're actually in me, you're actually working. What do you want to say to me? Or not even like, what do you want to do? Just enjoying that moment and just going, God, you're so good.
There's something about the rest in his presence that we can't find anywhere else, that And I think it's exactly what that verse in Philippians is talking about, that peace that surpasses all human understanding, that actually going, hey, yeah, I'm feeling you move, I'm feeling your presence, and I don't necessarily have to grab this opportunity to try and do business with you, but I can actually stop and rest in your presence. And that actually becomes so hugely more fulfilling and more peaceful and more restful than any kind of human rest we can strive to try and find in our lives. And yeah, I have had similar experiences, and I've just felt all those anxieties, all those worries, just they don't disappear, but they just fade out of the foreground because there is someone else who is carrying and sharing that burden with me. It's not just me carrying that. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Maddie, is there anything you want to share around, how your faith has sustained you through some of the difficulties?
Yeah, I think very similar to what you were both just saying. This often in the midst of anxiety, it's hard to think fully formed thoughts. And so often prayer time can just look like saying, God, I need you. And just sitting in that space and I guess, reflecting on who God is and acknowledging that he's still in control. And I really like the verse, I think it's in Romans, that speaks about we do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through brothers' groans. And I think I found that to be true, that with my sort of overactive mind, I can just get so overwhelmed by everything there is to pray about and to tell God about. And I can almost feel this burden that I need to catch him up on everything that's happened. And it's such a relief knowing that, I mean, firstly, he knows exactly what's happened. He knows what's going to happen. I don't have to give him the recap. I can just pick up from like where we are now, but that also when I'm feeling overwhelmed by the state of the world and everyone's needs around me and everything I could or should be praying for, just sort of trusting that God sees my heart, and that even though I can't express all those things I want to be praying about into full sentences, I believe he hears that anyway, and can intercede sort of on my behalf. So yeah,
that's really cool. And it gets you guys off the question about verses that sustain you, because you both actually mentioned some during that. So
yes,
I don't have to answer that question as a separate question. Look, I'm really encouraged hearing your guys' story. It's just wonderful to sit and chat with you guys and hear how you guys, it's not been easy at times. Knowing what I do with your story, there's been times where it's been really difficult to face the challenges. But to hear how you guys cling to God through that and continue to just grow in your relationship with him, but also your love and support for each other through that is just a really encouraging story. And I think it's a real encouragement for other people who might be in similar situations like myself, even just to be reminded that, hey, it's, there is someone else that carries this burden. God is the first and the foremost, even in our marriage, even when one of us plays more of that carer role than the other one does. That actually, it's not us doing that in our own strength. It's purely through his strength that we're able to survive. And, I can look back on my own experience and know the times where I've really struggled and really felt that burden has been the times when I've been furthest from God. And there's something there in that, in trying to carry that burden in your own strength, that we're human. We can't carry that by ourselves, kind of thing. It's really only through his grace that we're able to do that in a way where, we're still thriving and, life is still enjoyable and things like that. So I'm really encouraged to hear your guys' story.
Oh, that's good.
I just want to start to wrap things up a little bit. because I also have to manage my wife's anxiety, and so I have to tell her a time I'll be home when I'm doing anything.
Good,
and I
good.
said 6:30, so I've got like 17 minutes left before I can quickly switch everything off and jump in the car. Okay, so there's two questions I kind of want to finish up with. One is, are there things you guys have learnt along the way that have led you to change the way you approach anxiety in your marriage? As you guys kind of, have gone from and, to your credit, you've only been married just over a year kind of thing. You've only been doing it, under the same roof for, 14 months or whatever. But in that time, and also going back from when you were dating and engaged and going to that point, is there things you've learned over the way that have helped you better deal with the anxiety?
I think we've learned to play to each other's strengths. And so just to reduce, the times where that, one of us might be anxious about something. So, for example, I make all the phone calls. Maddie is not one for talking on the phone, so I make all the phone calls. You can probably think of things you do for me.
Not right now. I do things. Yeah. That's a big one. Just knowing, I guess, when you struggle with anxiety, there's always a wrestle with, fighting against your nature or fighting against that automatic response you have to some things that are just hard and always will be. And in the past, I'd been in relationships where I guess the person had taken the approach of, tough luck, you're just going to have to do it all yourself because how will you ever learn? Or, you need to push past the anxiety. That's not completely the wrong way to go, but it's been really freeing to be able to go, you know what? I know myself. I know that I hate phone calls. Matt, you are great on the phone. You can take them. And just allowing each other to have those things that, that we don't have to be equal on every task and stuff. I think I've gotten better at, speaking about the anxiety and describing it and bringing Matt on that journey. And so if I'm feeling anxious, even if it's just a couple of words, just letting him know, like, please don't talk to me right now, or don't ask me a question. I can't right now, especially when we're out and, if there's a decision to be made or something, sometimes I've just gotten better at saying, hey, can you please decide? I don't mind, and my mind's a bit stuck right now. Whereas in the past I would have been a bit more hidden about that, or kind of just avoided the question, or which would have made it harder for Matt to kind of see what was going on. So as soon as I let you in, you're very practical, like, great, I'll take the lead. I'll once you know what's going on.
And these are coping strategies that that have come about a lot through counselling and seeing a counsellor and a psychologist at times. And these are, there's sometimes a bit of some shame, or I've heard various people have felt a little bit ashamed from seeing someone about their mental health issues. So we've found it to be really helpful, giving Maddie practical things that she can do. And I'm sure in that moment, like describing, hey, look, I just need a minute. Can you please just decide? These are like strategies that have come out of these conversations with a counsellor. And so, just little coping mechanisms. So I think that's something that you've been doing
for years. All my life. But that's true. You're not going to let me take credit for it all on my own. I thought of that one.
And I guess the other thing I wanted to ask is, what would either of you, both of you, say to someone who is in a relationship where, anxiety is a factor? What would you say to encourage someone in that, from either side of the anxiety queen?
I think from my perspective, at least, just coming at it with a real humble attitude and just going, I don't understand. And I'm never going to fully understand what goes on inside your head and what you're thinking and feeling. And it's not my job to either. Like you're there to learn and understand the best you can. But you're there just to support and to love in those moments. And I think listening and supporting is probably the best thing that you can do, and ask lots of questions. Because that's what I did. Because I didn't understand a lot. So definitely the first early or dating years was just asking a lot of questions and just sort of throwing out situations and asking for feedback and saying, how did that make you feel, or this situation, or is there anything that I could have done that would have helped more than what I did in that scenario. So
and I would say two things. The first would just be that before you fully open up to your partner or whoever you're dating about your anxiety and being honest about that, before you do that, there's almost this fear that if you do show your true colors, it'll be too much for them to handle. And as scary as it is, the only way to get rid of that fear is just to tell them. And I was fortunate to have let Matt know early on. So from that moment on, I wasn't worrying about what would he think if he really knew me. But I know that would be so hard for a lot of people who are already in a relationship and then feel like, oh no, I haven't shared everything. So I think that would be the first thing, is just start talking about it. Even if you don't approach it all in one conversation, if you just in those little moments start letting them in on what you're feeling, that it would be really helpful. And the second thing is to just, as the person with anxiety, to be mindful that you're not the only one with struggles in the relationship, and that it can be so easy to fall into, I guess, a bit of a victim mentality, that or just that you're always the one who needs rescuing, and you can almost put your partner up on a pedestal that they're perfect and they have life figured out, and that's going to be really disappointing when you work out that they're not perfect. But also it's not giving you credit for saying, you might be the one with mental health issues in the relationship, but you also have strengths and gifts and things that they love about you, and you're not a charity case. There are things that you can offer, and just sort of just recognizing that mental health is it might be one weakness you have, but you're both equal parts of the relationship.
That's it. Mental health doesn't mean that you're not an equal part of that relationship. It just means you've got some more stuff going on to deal with.
Yeah. That was much more succinct.
Maddie and Matt, thank you so much for being so open and sharing so much of your story with us. It's a real encouragement to hopefully people that might be in a relationship where one of the members is dealing with anxiety, or even knowing friends that are dealing with it in a relationship or in a couple, knowing that there is ways to get through it, there is ways you can deal with it, and ultimately that encouragement to find your strength in God to be getting through that. So I really applaud you guys for being so open and sharing so much, and hope that you continue to cling to each other and cling to Him throughout whatever the future brings for you guys. So thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been great to have you with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. If it was helpful or encouraging, we'd love for you to drop a like on it and share it around. You can see way more content on our website, anxiousfaith.org, where you can listen to each episode of the podcast, find more resources, and read our blog all around mental health and faith. Be sure to also follow us on socials via the links in the description and subscribe to our channel so you can be kept in the loop when we're dropping more content for you. Thanks so much and God bless.